Good morning. Okay, you guys think I'm tall or something. Scoot this thing down. You won't be able to see me. Be like, hey, look at everyone. It's Papa's Mark. I resemble that remark. And the white beard going. All right. There was a chicken that crossed the road. And when he got to the other side, he met a man. He said, "What's your name?" He said, "Bond. James Bond." "What's your name?" Chicken said, "Ken. Chick Ken." I know that's terrible. Let me warn you, it only gets worse. What do you call a chicken that crosses the road? That's a poultry in motion. Yeah, they don't get any better. What do you call a boomerang that doesn't repeat? A stick. Good job. Somebody got that one. What do you call four bullfighters in quicksand? Cuatro Cinco. Some of you guys are sharp. Cuatro Cinco. It's kind of a dual thing there with the Spanish. You know, it's even funnier. It's funnier in two languages, I should say. What do you call cheese that isn't yours? Nachos. That's right. You hear that in my house all the time. Hey, that's nacho cheese. Nacho cheese. It's nachos. Leave it alone. How about this? What do you call a man who falls into an upholstery machine? He is fully recovered. I know, it's terrible. It's terrible. How about this? What do you call a Christian who doesn't serve? It's a contradiction. So you might think it's all silly, but I wanted to get you thinking over here in a certain direction this morning, and then I wanted to take you over here. Because honestly, what's quite clear, one another is our sermon series, and today you saw the video, serve one another. That's where we're at. When we think about serving one another, we usually think over here somewhere. Yeah, I'll serve others, you betcha. But the problem is we're over here in the wrong mindset. We have the wrong motives. You think about that innkeeper in the parable of the Good Samaritan. Remember I talked about this months ago. There were 4 philosophies in that parable that Jesus taught. And the 4th philosophy was the innkeeper. And he basically said, what's mine is mine, but I'll share it with you. That is, I'll sell it to you, more specifically. Remember, he's the guy that says, I'll get involved if there's something in it for me. So, you know, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. And so when we think about serving one another, that's typically where we're at. I'll get involved and I'll help, but there's got to be something in it for me. And so I wanted to take you from that mindset over here and try to shift you over here, because that's where we need to be today. Our shift in thought needs to completely change in our ideas of what it means to serve one another. And so this week, as I was putting the sermon together, now some of you know all too well how busy my week was. It was really busy. And I never get up here and tell you how busy my week was because you guys don't care. You have a busy week also. But I just want to share with you a little bit of what my week was like. Started school again on Monday, so it's a brand new semester. It's grad school, so it's 8 weeks. So they take, your 16 weeks and they cram it into 8 and they double everything up. And so I had, where's Professor Hines? Is he here? He's not my professor in class, but I was going to say, they put way too much workload out there. I'm just saying right now. I had a 4-page paper I had to write week 1. Give me a break. And I had discussion boards. More than 1,500 words for stupid discussion boards. It's outrageous. Plus a research paper. So it's insane. And then a couple quizzes. It's week 1. I'm like, hello guys, week 1. It should be an introduction to the class. My name is Ray. This is where I'm at. Good to meet you. And then the real work starts after that. No, they just load it on. So it was stressful. Very stressful this week. I got it all done, almost. Some I still do today. But then Wednesday, I passed 2 more kidney stones. So that was a fun Monday and Tuesday, Wednesday. It was kind of like that. Walking in like, hey guys, what's going on? And so it was rough. It was pretty slow. Then Thursday, we had a wedding rehearsal in here, which was really, really great. And it was a pretty good sized bridal party. And most everyone spoke Assyrian, not English. And so it was, you go here, and then somebody's over here translating for us. And so it was fun, but it was a long, very stressful time. Friday, we had the wedding. Yeah, it was great. But again, just busy, busy, busy. And yesterday, we had a funeral. Miss Ann Bodie. So here we are today. So my week has been a blur. Okay? And during that time, I can tell you when I get stressed and I get frustrated, I need to step out. I need to just I usually go to the park and I sit there and I pray or I walk around the park. I didn't do that this week. With the kidney, I just wasn't feeling like walking anywhere. So I took my iPod, and I've talked about my iPod before. I got the little itty bitty, it's a freebie, got it free, so I didn't buy it. So you guys are thinking, hey, this guy too much, he's got an iPod. Okay? You've seen my car, it's a 92 Toyota Corolla. It's got rust everywhere, it's got duct tape. You've seen my other vehicle, I don't even have the front bumper. Come on, guys. Not rolling in the dirt, okay? So I take my iPod, alright? And I just need to get it ripped. And so I start to listen to one of my favorite Christian bands, 10th Avenue North. And I always give them a little plug because those guys, they have a way of just taking whatever's going on, whatever's spinning a million miles in my life, and they have a way of just helping me to focus it right here and just step back and get my focus on Christ and get my clarity and my thinking, and I can move forward again. I feel like I can breathe again. So I was doing that. But as I was listening to my iPod, I started thinking about that iPod. You know, iPods they're pretty cool. They're pretty neat devices. They've replaced for those of you who don't know, they've replaced the Walkman from long ago, okay? You can put hundreds of artists on there, okay, bands, and you can put thousands of songs. So they're really cool. You can just kind of click and go. And you put your earbuds in, and it's just you, and it's just music. And if you get the really good earbuds, again, I don't have, guys, okay? But supposedly the really good ones just make you feel like you're there. You know, Live or Memorex thing? I'm still Memorex, but Memorex all worn down. I'm more like reel to reel, okay, or 8-track. All right, I'm not even up to the Memorex stage necessarily. But you get that you really get the music how it was meant to be. Well, I'm not quite there. But they do make a connection with me as I listen. And as I'm listening, you know, I'm thinking that this is all me. And what I mean is, nobody else can hear. I mean, the earbuds are in my ears. I can crank it up almost as loud as I want. I guess if I go too loud, you can't hear it. But I can turn it up. I can listen. It's just me. I'm not bothering anybody. No one else is affected by it. But I'm not sharing it either. Now, don't get me wrong. You can buy some pretty cool gadgets like we have that allows you to play the iPod through your car stereo. You can buy the iHome, plug it in, and it plays through speakers. So you have some options. But let's face it, for the most part, an iPod is something for personal use. It's something that you don't really share, okay? And so as I was thinking about that, I was thinking about the text today and the 12 guys that we're going to meet in the text. And you know, they weren't really interested in sharing. They were pretty much interested in serving. It's pretty much where they were at. Of course, the 12 I'm talking about are the 12 disciples. They've been with Jesus for 3 years. You know, they walk the earth with him. They're right there. They eat with him. They drink with him. They learn right there at his feet. And they still just don't get everything he's saying. In so many ways, they're not on the same page still at all. In fact, we read in Matthew and Mark both about a discussion that the disciples had. In fact, we read that they had this discussion more than once. They were discussing who would be the greatest in the kingdom. You guys remember that discussion? How they're talking about that? It's almost like an argument of who's going to be the greatest in the kingdom. And every time Jesus hears it, he has the same answer. Guys, you don't get it. You're not getting it, okay? Pay attention. It's not like that. All right? My kingdom is not of this world. And so in my kingdom, in my church, whoever wants to be the greatest is going to be a servant to all. They just weren't getting it. He's making it clear. And so, in order to follow that example, obviously the greatest example of serving is that of Jesus. He came to serve and not to be served. So, we follow his example. Do we? That's a real question. Do we follow his example? Do we serve him? We see way back in the book of Acts that the early disciples, they came together, the early church, and they sold their possessions so that they could give to those in need. Now that tells me that we, as Christians, we've been mobilized to serve. It's pretty simple. We have been moved in that direction to serve in a ministry. And so as we look at the text today, really Matthew chapter 20, I want to bounce around a little bit through the text because there are several things that I want to specifically point out. But first of all, I just want to share with you a little bit of the text, give you some context of where we're going. Matthew chapter 20, right in the opening, right away, Jesus starts to tell a parable, and he's talking about a vineyard owner. This guy, he owns a vineyard, and he needs some workers. And so he looks around, and he goes out into the town, and he finds some guys, and he arranges what he's going to pay them, and they agree, and they come back, and they start working. And then later on, he's looking around again, he's thinking, man, I still need some more workers. And so he goes back out, and he gets more workers, and he tells them, I'll pay you this. They say, okay. They come in, they start working, and again, later, a third time, there's about an hour left in the day. And he's looking around, he's thinking, well, I got a lot of stuff we got to get. I need some more workers still. He goes out, and he gets more workers, and he says, I'll pay you this. And they say, okay. And he brings them back, and they work. And then at the end of the day, everybody comes in because they want to get paid. And they're all getting the same exact pay. And so the guy that worked 1 hour is getting the same pay as the guy that worked 8 hours in the heat of the Palestine sun. Now, you can imagine they didn't think that was very fair, right? And so I love how awesome Jesus is, and he just takes that and everything just builds upon it. Now, he knew that there was going to be this discussion coming up. And so I love that he's talking about fairness. And so he responds immediately by saying, those who will be first will be last. And those who will be last will be first. And he's making it clear, if you humble yourself, you'll be exalted. But if you exalt yourself, you will be humbled. And so I just want to look at the text again, specifically Matthew chapter 20, starting at verse 25. It says, Jesus called them together and said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. So in other words, Jesus makes it really clear. He says, hey, if you want to be great in my kingdom, you're going to have to be one who is going to serve all people. Pretty clear, right? Seems to be pretty clear. You have to serve others. Again, do we do that? How well do we do that? Well, the first thing I want you to get out of the text this morning is when it comes to serving one another, we need to check our motives. You see, as we move on, Jesus shares this parable of the vineyard owner, and he's dealing right away with this topic. I love it because Jesus is looking forward to this discussion he's going to have in just a few moments. We're going to get there, but he's already looking forward to that because he's Jesus and he's awesome. And so he tells a parable to start off. It seems like it's out of the blue, and he's talking about this. Oh, fairness. They didn't think they were being treated fairly. And so in the text, we start to look at verses 20 and 21, and we meet a woman who's going to visit Jesus, and she's headed towards him, and she has a request. She's got a very specific request for Jesus. She's walking, and she has 2 boys along with her 2 sons, James and John. Now this woman, we know her as the wife of Zebedee. It's the mother of James and John. And her request is very specific. So as she approaches Jesus, he just simply says, what do you want? And you guys probably know the request. She said, well, I want my boys to sit on thrones next to you. On either side of you, when you sit in your glorious throne and you're there and you're reigning, I want my boys to be right at your right and your left. And for anyone other than the king, the king has the highest seat of glory, but anyone sitting to the right or the left of the king, that is a very, very, very prestigious place to be seated. And so she's coming in and asking, now that seems kind of extreme, doesn't it? Hey, look, I want my boys to sit right next to you, you know? But before we start beating her up too bad, Jesus did say in Matthew 19, verse 28, he said, truly I tell you, at the renewal of all things, when the Son of Man sits on his glorious throne, you who have followed me will also sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. So she kind of got it right, didn't she? I mean, she was kind of there, but her motives were just a little bit skewed. It wasn't, I want them to reign along with you. It's, I want them right here in these seats of power and prominence. And here's, I shouldn't say funny. I mean, she completely missed where Jesus said, he who would be first would be last, and he who was last would be first. Okay? But here's where it gets almost a little comical. You just bear with me. Almost a little bit comical, because the disciples, the 10 disciples, hear what's going on with these 2 disciples, and they're not happy about it. You know, Warren Wiersbe said this. He said, Jesus was talking about a cross, but the disciples were thinking about that crown. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Think about it. There are a lot of times when Jesus is teaching us and preaching to us, and we're reading our Bibles and we're really getting it. He is so heavily talking about the cross. In our minds, you see, we're over here. We're over here. And we're thinking about that crown. And Jesus is trying to bring us over here to that cross and say, no, look. It's about denying yourself. All right? Take up your cross and follow me. And we're over here with, no, I got to do this because I'm going to get that crown. Now, don't hear me wrong. We need to press on toward the prize, okay? But our focus, we got to make sure that we keep our motives in check, serving one another. Jesus was talking about a cross. The disciples kept thinking about that crown. And so I love it. Jesus makes a simple question when she approaches. He says, what do you want? I love it. Real simple. He already knows. But it's a good question for us this morning. What do you want? I mean, honestly, when you come in here on Sunday mornings, what do you want? Are you coming in, are you looking to be served? Are you looking to learn how to serve others? Are you looking to grow so that you can serve others? I mean, let's just be honest. I'm not going to beat you up on this, but I want you to take some time and just really think about this honestly. What are you looking for when you come in here? Because there are far too many Christians in word only, by name only. They come in and they sit. They want to be served. You take care of me. You feed me. You, for me. And that's it. It's that me. It's that me mindset. We default setting. We go back to that default setting, just like the 12 disciples. We default back to a selfishness. Now, don't hear me again wrong on this. There is that part that we do need to take care of ourselves. We do need to preserve ourselves. It's like salt. Jesus said, "You are the salt of the earth." Now, something about salt that you might not be aware of. Back in Jesus' day, when he's talking about that, salt was used as a preservative, okay? They didn't have Kenmore refrigerators, okay? They couldn't just go over their side-by-side refrigerators and take out their food. They had to preserve like for fish, they would pack it in salt, and it would preserve that food so it would last longer. We have to preserve ourselves before we can reach out and be salt to anybody else. Does that make sense? Totally makes sense. But we don't always do that. Our default setting goes back to selfish, and we come in and we sit, and it's like you're punching a time clock. And we don't move out, we don't step out. It's like we talked about love last week. Love one another. And I started this series specifically talking about love one another. Because if we don't get love one another right, we're not going to get serve one another. We're not going to pray for one another. We're not going to encourage one another. We won't do those other things if we don't have that foundation of love rooted in Christ. So when it comes to serving one another, first and foremost, guys, we got to check our motives. We need to check those. But second, we need to put others first, and we need to serve one another. Now, we're coming back to the disciples. We're coming back to those 10 disciples that are overhearing what's taking place, okay? So here we go with the text. Matthew 20, verse 24 says, when the 10 heard about this, they were indignant with the two brothers. And what's going on, again, is the two brothers are coming with mom. Hey, mom, if you say Jesus, do this, he'll probably listen to you. I mean, who can say, is there anybody in here say no to your mom? Especially, no, you probably shouldn't show your hands, I'd be mad. We just don't say no to mom. Yes, mom. Yes, mom. Who can say no to mom? So they bring mom along. And Jesus knows what's going on. He already knows their motives. And so the 10 says they're indignant. Wow, indignant. That actually means to be greatly afflicted. They were upset. That's where it was. They had their feathers ruffled, so to speak. Okay? Now, here's where it gets just a little bit humorous, as I said a moment ago, okay? They're not so upset. They're not so indignant as in, how could they dare? How would they dare ask such a horrible thing? My goodness. They were indignant because they're thinking, man, they beat us to the punch. Their motives weren't any different than the motives of the two. It was that I serve. They're still right there in that mindset of serving. Yeah, serve one another. But what's in it for me? What do I get out of it? And so, Thomas Rainier says this. He says, when we see selfishness, it's a bad thing. He says, selfishness always results in dissension. When we think only of ourselves, and that's, of course, I serve, right, guys? When we think only of ourselves, community breaks down, and unity is replaced with division and backbiting. That's why one of the best things we can do as a church is to serve together. A church that serves together stays together. And I really believe that those are really solid words from Thomas Rainier, a Christian author. Really solid words on what we need to do. We need to serve together as a church. And you think about unity. I really commend the elders for what they did. They stepped out and said, we're going to go to one service. And there was a lot of opposition. And they said, we need to do this. We need to be united. We need to see everybody at one time together in one room and see the unity and find those common bonds that we really do have, but we don't know each other from separate services. That's what we're trying to do. That's where we're moving forward. It's unity. It's bringing everyone together. And even when the disciples are indignant, right? And they're upset, what does Jesus do in the next verse? He calls them together. Seriously, I love that. He's like, come on in, guys. It's like, come and huddle in here. Let's go get in close, because I'm going to tell you what you need to hear, and you want to be in close so you can hear me. I love it. Bringing them together. And so in those times, boy, times come, like we've already gone through, with many, many issues. What have we done? We've come together. So we're coming together, learning to serve one another. Jesus knows. He knows our default setting. It's selfishness. He knows that. He sees it there in his disciples. So he knows they're thinking, well, this is unfair. They got to ask that. We wanted to do that. That's so not fair. I think that's why they were indignant, thinking that's so not fair. And again, it goes backwards. Well, I guess for you guys, it goes this way. It goes backwards to that opening parable. Boy, they didn't think it was fair that they worked all day and got paid the same as the guy who worked an hour. I guess I'd be upset too, but I'm just saying. He arranged a payment with them. They accepted. They did the work. Done deal. So I love how Jesus just makes those, he just connects the dots. He already knows, all right, these guys are going to start fussing, they're going to say something, there's going to be this unfair treatment that they're going to have. And he makes it very, very clear to them, guys, if you want to be the greatest, going back to that argument, that discussion, if you want to be the greatest in my kingdom, you're going to be the one who serves others. How many of you have heard of the name Dave Thomas? Ever gone to Wendy's? If you've gone to Wendy's, you've heard of the name Dave Thomas. You've seen it, seen his picture. Dave Thomas, all right, founder of Wendy's. And he was on, they have this newsletter that they pass out every quarter. I think it's quarterly now. I think it used to be sometime, it was monthly, but they went to quarterly. Might even be annually at this point, I'm sorry. So, just trying to keep you up with it. Anyways, it's a newsletter of some sort, distributed at some time every year. How about that? We'll go with that. Fair enough? All right. And on the cover of one of those, he was standing with an apron. He was dressed in his suit, but he was wearing an apron, and he had a mop in this hand, and he had a bucket in this hand. And the caption on it said, "I got my MBA long before I got my GED." Now, MBA is not a master's in business administration in Wendy's terminology. An MBA, according to Wendy's terminology, is a mop bucket attitude. He got his MBA from following a master. Pretty cool, huh? So what's your mop bucket attitude? What's your MBA? Remember now, when Pilate was standing there before Jesus, he had the power and the authority to acquit Jesus and to set him free. You remember what he did? He called for a bucket. And he washed his hands, and he said, "All right, here's the deal. I'm out of it. I'm over here. I don't want any part of this." He could have done something, but he decided, I'm looking out for me. Right here. I'm taking care of number one. But remember when Jesus sat with his disciples, and he got a bucket, and he washed their feet. Big difference. He served others. So what is it, guys? What's your MBA? What's your mop bucket attitude? Is it an I serve? Or is it I serve others? Remember, Jesus made it clear. Those who would be the greatest in his kingdom are those who would serve one another. Let's pray. Father, you are great. God,